All right. Well, welcome everyone to our tonight's conversation. Just talking tonight with a bunch of friends of ours. My name is Jim Silt, and I work for a company called Deploy Learning, and I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. Chris Hart.
Hello, good evening. My name is Chris, and I work at Unstuck Learning Design. And Jim and I thought it was really important for us to help wherever we could and to connect with people and bring people together, particularly in Australia. And we're very, very lucky tonight to also be connecting with some wonderful people overseas as well, just to, talk about what it looks like when we do move online and move learning online.
Yeah, it's we're so grateful for everybody to make the time tonight. We really wanted to make sure that tonight is a kickoff where we hear from people around the world that have been doing this. And we want to just hear from people here in Australia what they're doing to prepare for potentially going online. We see schools are closing. We hear about schools closing every day. So we just wanted to make sure that you have the resources, and we just wanted to bring this conversation here together with us here in Australia. And we know we have guests from all around, but we really just wanted to help you and with what you're doing now.
And just on that, Jim, just before we get into the kind of real meat of the session, we would like to spend just a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. In fact, the lands that we're meeting on. So those of us who are down in Victoria and Melbourne, we're meeting on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people and the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nations. And Swan and Chris, I think you're up on the traditional lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. So, and the rest of us who are spread about the world, just to realize that how important it is when we think about land and when we come together on land and we pay our respects to those traditional custodians, the elders past, present, and emerging. And definitely from Jim and I, our massive respect to you for connecting in this way online. So we can share a story. We can all share our stories in a very, very traditional way. So do we want to introduce our panel, Jim?
Yeah, that would be great. I just wanted to welcome on right away to start off. We'll hear from Adam tonight. And Adam, thank you for joining us from Hong Kong, where you're in the past. But we're really just excited to hear of what you've been doing there in Hong Kong and what we might be able to learn from that. Sandra Chow, who joins us from China, she'll be joining us a little bit later in the hour, and we're excited to hear from her what has happening. I believe she's in Shanghai. I'd have to just make sure of that. Yeah. Emily, Rich, and Lorinda are here from the Melbourne area. And we're so excited to hear from them because we know they've been working really hard to prepare for what might happen here with school closures. So we're going to hear from them in just a few minutes. And then we're also joined, Chris, by some folks from Google. And Swan Yo, who oversees Google Australia. We're so grateful to have him. And Kimberly Hall and Chris Betcher, who is not pictured here, are also on the call to help maybe with the conversation with what they've been having with teachers. And so it's exciting to hear about having them on the call as well. This is not just a Google call. So we've been talking really quickly about if we're allowed to say any other products than Google, and we've been given permission to say other products. So that's good. So thanks, you guys. Thanks, everybody, for making the time. We know how important your time is, especially happening right now. And we're so grateful that we could get everybody together just to kick off this conversation tonight. And to start us off, I would like to welcome Mr. Adam Hill, who comes in from Hong Kong. And Adam, you bring a very unique perspective to this conversation, don't you?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Thanks for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. The perspective I bring is that we've been closed since the beginning. Right at the beginning of February is when Hong Kong and China closed. So this is old news for us. I think we're into week 7 or week 8, something like that. We stopped counting.
You must have
yeah, and we're also going until, in Hong Kong anyway, April 20th is the date we've been given. And even then, it's likely to be staggered. So yeah, that's our situation.
Adam, they have actually said that you're going to come back on April 20th. Is that how realistic?
Yeah, that's what they've told us, but that keeps changing. But actually, the situation in Hong Kong is quite stable compared to other places. So we hope that will happen. They're just being extra cautious at this stage.
Yeah, I can imagine. Can you talk a little bit about what has been working for you? I mean, what is top of mind? What are the things that have really stood out to you as having worked?
I think the most obvious thing that seems to be working is the learning. We've managed to keep it going. So that's been really good. It's been better than I think anyone expected. Nothing compares to being in school with the kids, but what we're doing is working. That's what we feel. The other thing that's been great is just the whole community pulling together. The school community, the Hong Kong community, and now increasingly everyone around the world really pulling together to help each other. Our parents have been incredible. They've been really important partners while we're doing this.
Oh, I can imagine. When you talk about the things that are working, is there a particular thing that that you've done that really stands out as being maybe whatever the standout is for helping kids learn?
I think the most amazing thing in the school is just how everyone's embracing technology because they haven't really got a choice. So I think the tech skill in our school and among Hong Kong is just going to go, it's going to go sky high. And I think that's going to have an effect after we reopen. So that's the silver lining here, that everyone seems to be upskilling wherever they are on their technology journey. They're just kind of taking that extra step.
Can you maybe just talk us through like what a day looks like for you, Adam, right now? So, get up, have your breakfast, then what happens?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's different for every school. And I think what works for one school won't necessarily work for another. But right now, we don't have to be in school. We don't have to report to school. So that's a bit unique. I don't know if other schools are making teachers go in, but we don't have to be, and we can actually be anywhere in the world, as long as we're online on school hours. Between 8 and 3:30, we need to be online with the kids. So, if we're in other countries, we need to keep that in mind, Hong Kong time. But yeah, we're online with the kids. We set some daily learning engagements, usually a pre-recorded lesson. And yeah, we're just online and ready to give feedback and push them along. We also have 2 daily time slots for video calls with the kids using a platform that's not Google. We use Zoom, which has been working really well. And that's great just for checking in with the kids and keeping the relationships going and keeping the conversations going. That's been really important.
Adam, when you say you just want to be available for the kids, it sounds to me that you're starting off the day with like almost face to face with the kids, or is that not happening? Or do they at 8 o'clock or 8:30, whenever it might be, do they just like double click something in Google Classroom or something, and then they start?
Yeah, so the learning engagements are posted at 8 o'clock each day. We also post a morning message just to kind of set up the day and set up our expectations. Then they will watch the video lessons. We're not doing it online together, which is, I think some schools are. There's a debate about whether to do synchronous learning or asynchronous. And I think there's pros and cons of each. But yeah, the children will they have their activities. They'll do it at a time that's convenient for them. We've also got to keep in mind that all over the world at the moment, some kids. Yeah, and then we're available twice a day on the Zoom calls.
Is there a time that you have to be available?
Yeah, the individual teachers have been setting the times for their own classes because, like I said, some kids are abroad and things like that. So the teachers know what time works for their classes. So we've got one in the morning and one in the afternoon.
That's good.
So, Adam, when you were talking about the advantages and disadvantages of asynchronous, learning being it's not at the same time, you can access it in your own time.
Yeah.
And synchronous learning where we're learning at the same time. Can you just explore those a little bit with us?
Yeah, sure. We chose asynchronous, and it might change in the future, but I think we've found a routine that's working right now, so we don't really want to change it too much. But at the beginning, it was because of different teachers' confidence with technology, and also considering kids all around the world. So finding a one time slot to work would have been difficult. So we went with pre-recorded lessons, and it just seems to be working. They can watch the lesson in their own time. They can rewind it. They can rewatch it. But again, we're always online to help and clarify.
I think it's important to note, Adam, that maybe a lot of people who don't know is that you were caught in the middle of a holiday, and a lot of kids never came back to Hong Kong because you teach at an international school. So a lot of kids are, or maybe even here in Australia or anywhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a few kids in Australia, the UK before it went bad there, America. And you're right, we were in the middle of a holiday. So actually, I stayed in the UK for a bit longer after schools reopened. But I was finding the time difference difficult, so I came back to Hong Kong.
That's a pretty wide spread, yeah.
Yeah, but we have kids all over.
That has to be really challenging. I imagine here in Australia that won't necessarily be the case, but I do think there's so much opportunity for a family to be like, wow, let's go to another town that has internet, but still be able to be part of this, right?
Totally.
I think that's amazing. So I've heard you say that Zoom is obviously working. What is there any other technology piece that you think is really an important or essential piece of this?
Yeah, I think we have a few kind of core tools that everyone seems to be using all the time, that really popular ones. They would include like Flipgrid, Edpuzzle, Screencastify has been massive for pre-recording lessons. So I mean, I've left some ideas on my blog about ideas and tools that I use regularly.
Can you tell us the blog? Just maybe speak out what that link is.
Yeah, it's mrhillismusings.com.
That's great. Yeah, I've peeked in on there as well, and it's been pretty popular. I can imagine with a lot of people all over the world who are having a freak out moment where they're able to just go in there and take a peek and just sort of be calmed down. I think because from my point of view, what I'm seeing, you're really relaxed about it, right? Which is so not what's happening, I think, right now.
Yeah, I think the first week was a bit hectic, especially because, like you said, we were caught off guard. We were on holiday. We weren't expecting this. So the first week was hectic, but we quickly found a routine, and it's working. Everyone seems to be happy. But I think what we didn't have, which I think is a luxury for other people, is time in school with your colleagues and kids. I think you should be making the best use of that to make sure everyone's prepared, because we didn't have that.
Yeah. Can you talk us through a little bit of that kind of, a lot of the tweets and a lot of blogs and things are talking about the technology, but can you talk a little bit more about that human aspect, and what are the kind of challenges that kids and staff and your community is facing in terms of not coming together physically, and how you're kind of tackling some of those?
Yeah, it is challenging, and there's not a lot we can do. There's talk of going back into school, maybe twice a week, just to kind of stagger that. But we're always connected. We're using Zoom, not just with the kids, but for staff meetings and collaborative planning meetings and things like that. We've even got, the principal is doing assemblies recorded, and kind of all the other little things that make up a school are all kind of going online. And when we are on Zoom, we really promote that collaboration, the discussions. So I think that time is really special and really important.
Oh yeah, and incidentally, there was I know Lucy Gray out of Chicago. She was sharing this beautiful doc on how to use Zoom, and all the really intricate pieces of it and how they're using it in this context. So just take a look if you guys or anybody think about using Zoom. Just to take a look online and look at the resources, just like almost all the other technology pieces.
Yeah, and I think sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I think it's important that it's so easy to find video lessons online and things that other people have made. But we're really making an effort to record our own lessons so the teachers can hear our own voices and, see us, and try and keep that up. I think that's really important.
That's a really important thing to say, I think, because it is about the kids being able to hear your voice and hear the other teachers' voices in these recordings, even if something as simple as how to, create a Google form or something like that, right? Yeah, that's really interesting. And have you heard any, I think to tack on to Chris's question, have you heard anything about how you're addressing kids who are just lonely, that they're just, is there any activities that you could maybe share with us that to help kids who are really wanting to feel connected to their classmates? Yeah,
I think a really important tool is Flipgrid. So, you can see the kids, you can see them talking, you can see them kind of on the screen all together. I think that's been a really important platform for that.
That's really great. Yeah, sorry, did you want to add something, Chris?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is there anything that you would, and I know this is probably a stupid question, but is there anything that you would normally do with your students in class which you have just been unable to find a technological solution for? Because maybe with all the brains in this webinar and beyond, we can help you to tackle that. Yeah,
I think with the lesson content, I think that's we can deliver that. They can still learn the content of the units and things like that. But I think it's kind of all those soft skills they're missing. The collaboration, the communication skills, all those kind of things are difficult to maintain.
Well, yeah, it'd be interesting to try to explore that, huh, Chris?
And even things like, I'm guessing, what are you doing with your, and schools are asking this question right now, is what are you doing with your assessment regime, for example? Are you bothering? Are you doing assessment for learning? Are you doing summative assessments? How are you going?
At the moment, just summative. Formative assessment. Just doing what we can formatively, and then when we get back to school, we'll think about revisiting some units and maybe assessing from there. But no real summatives at this point.
Yeah.
Hey Adam, can I just jump in and ask a quick question? I just want to take Chris Hart's last question and kind of turn it on its head. When this is all over and life goes back to normal and there's no more coronavirus, what parts of the online experience do you think you'd want to keep?
That's a good question. I think everybody's learned some kind of new technology that's amazing and they can take back into the classroom. I think whether you're starting from nothing or you've got a good foundation of technology, but you want to take it that next step. That's my experience. I've got some new kind of tricks that I can bring back into the classroom.
It would be good to see how many teachers want to continue something like that, right? That's a great question, Chris. Yeah, thanks. Is there anybody else has any questions for Adam before we move on a little bit? Does anybody have anything that they were curious about?
Hey Adam, Swan here. I just had a quick question. If you could take us back to, when you first found out, I guess, was it in January or February? You mentioned when you first found out that you're not going back to school. Can you sort of walk us through maybe the couple of days right after when you guys found out school's going to be closed? How did you guys react as a staff? How did you sort of get ready? Was there a period where you had just a lot of turmoil and mess, and then figure it out quickly? Like what?
Yeah, the good question. We were on holiday, so we didn't want to disturb staff. We didn't think it was fair to kind of interrupt their holiday. But anyone kind of in a leadership position were involved in those discussions. So I was actually in Budapest at the time, and with a lot of conversations going on. I don't really remember much of Budapest. But just as a leadership team, we were making a lot of contingency plans, kind of debating what would work best. So a lot of discussions going on in leadership, but because we were on holiday, just trying to leave it up to leadership at that point.
I can picture you in the hot tub in one of the Budapest spas, checking your email.
Yeah,
exactly. I got to get dressed. Yeah, that's great. Any other questions for Adam? Especially if you're just joining us and just sort of listening in, feel free to jump in and ask Adam any questions. This is my appropriate teacher wait time.
Adam, maybe, since here in Australia, we haven't closed, not any, but we haven't closed most schools yet. What advice would you give, for all of the educators that are here, to prepare both the staff and students and parents, parent community, in the event that school does close? What would you say, you definitely have to do?
Yeah, and before I answer that question, you just reminded me of something that I think is really important, and that's send a survey out to parents and get their feedback. That was really important early on. I think a week into the remote learning, we sent a survey, and the feedback we got was really, really positive. But the advice that they had really improved their experience as a parent. But while you're still in school, I think it's really important to make sure all teachers equipped with the technology. They know how to use it. They don't have to scramble, when they start next week or whenever it is. Just making sure everyone knows what good practice looks like and how to use the technology to achieve that.
That's a big statement, isn't it, though? Everybody has to know what good practice looks like and how to achieve it, right? It sounds like you have an amazing school, Adam, and we're so grateful for your perspective. I think we maybe want to transition a little bit to hear from what's happening here in Australia, specifically here in the Melbourne area. And we've brought along some good friends, Rich Lambert. We also have Lorinda and Emily, who are also joining us on the call. And maybe we just get it started. Rich, because I can see you here. I can't see Emily and Lorinda in my screen. But Rich, you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing and where you are, and maybe just talk a little bit about your school.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, my headphones weren't working, so they're off. So we've got a really interesting challenge at the moment where in Victoria there's a real push to keep schools open at the moment. However, a lot of parents are choosing to keep their kids at home. So we've actually, while we fully expect to shut down, we are in this interesting place where we are open for business. We've got kids sitting in front of us, but we've also got a quarter of our kids whose parents are keeping them home. So the challenge, I guess, for me in my school is how to maintain that inclusive environment for all students. If they're at home now, we're guessing they're probably going to be home for anywhere up to sort of 3 months, possibly. How do we keep delivering face-to-face content, but also be inclusive of the kids at home, and then looking, of course, then to possibly transition to more where Adam's at, where everyone's at home, possibly in the future. So, yeah, challenging times at the moment.
I can imagine, Rich. And Rich, just to let everybody else know, because we know you so well, you are a principal at a department school here in Victoria, yeah?
Yeah, so principal of a primary school in Victoria, government school, and so we're sort of all in the same boat, watching out for updates that we get a couple of times a day at the moment about where things are at, and then trying to communicate that to the community. So it's been a pretty hectic last week. Yeah,
that's right. I think I was talking to you the other night, and you were still at school. So
yeah, yeah, pretty much. Still getting calls and emails.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, so, great.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rich. Let me just introduce Lorinda Ferry. Lorinda, do you want to jump in and say hello?
Hi, everyone. Lorinda Ferry from Melbourne. I'm a digital coach at Wesley College here.
Yeah, Lorinda, welcome. What are you guys? Where are you? Where are you in this whole process? What's happening?
In the back end, our digital team for the last 3 weeks has been preparing paperwork, just sort of guidelines and expectations for the different year levels. So from early learning to year 4, certain expectations about what might happen at home. Then from year 5 through to year 9, a different set of expectations. And then for the senior years, depending on the length of the school closure, we want to have a lot more lessons that are actually timed to lessons that would happen normally during school time, and encourage our senior kids to be rocking up for a general lesson, for a quick check-in and some learning activities. So definitely a lot of paperwork, definitely drawing on a lot of the work of people from China, Hong Kong, the US. Every school has been so good across the globe with sharing their documentation. So just even a quick glance on Twitter or Facebook groups, they're really keen to share some of their documentation. So yeah, a lot of documentation and preparing our top 2 digital platforms that we want our teachers living and breathing in, so that the parents and students have a seamless experience.
Yeah, seamless. That's a big, powerful word, isn't it? Well, thanks, Lorinda. Emily, are you there? Can you jump on and say hello?
Hi, I'm Emily MacLean. I am a deputy head of junior school at an independent school here in Melbourne. We're very similar to the other schools in Melbourne. We're kind of in this hybrid mode right now where we have many of our students choosing to stay home, but we are still open and have a good portion of our classes still there. So similarly, we've been doing a lot of the back end work to get things ready. I'm very thankful for the independent school and international school friends that we have that have been definitely sharing a lot of great work. And we were using those to really guide us with our own templates. What we've been really hoping to do for our staff is build them a sense of structure and a framework, kind of an idea of a sandbox for them to do what they need to do once they get into the distance learning platforms.
I can imagine can be difficult.
So can I bring back that question, which I originally asked Adam, around asynchronous and synchronous learning, and what are your plans and what you're thinking? And then when you imagine yourself and you push yourself forward in, just maybe, let's say, after the Easter holidays and we're back in term 2, but maybe kids haven't come back, what does that day look like for those kids in your current planning? And I know this might shift and I'm not getting you to commit to anything, but just interested to hear from any of you about that.
I think our plans are very dynamic and very fluid right now. We are starting off with asynchronous learning. And it depends on what part of the school as well. So for our junior school at our ELC, definitely asynchronous. In our senior school, we are looking more to a normal timetable. And it's a little bit easier for them to jump into group chats online and video conferencing. But for our younger kids, we're just going to keep it simple right now and familiar to the platforms that they already know.
Great. Thanks, Emily.
So we've got, I guess, as a government school, a proportion of the population as well that we're probably particularly worried about keeping track of when all this hits. They don't have a consistent home life or probably a device really suited to the learning that we're looking at, and sometimes not a consistent internet connection. So we're looking at trying to provide opportunities through the day, as Adam was talking about, particularly in the morning, to have that face-to-face contact. Sort of virtual circle time, we're calling it, where you can check in if you're available to check in and see the teacher's face and everyone say hi and how you doing. And from there move to pushing content out through Google Classroom. But I guess what we're particularly worried about is those kids, and we're very aware that there'll be different levels. There'll be kids at home with parents onto them, you know, every minute of the day pushing them along, and then there'll be the kids that might have 5 minutes a day and that's it. So aware of the pedagogy and how we break it down, I guess lesson content maybe into smaller chunks and accessible points for kids that are accessing the curriculum through limited means.
Absolutely. Can we circle back to that just in 1 minute to talk about that kind of mental health, psychological safety piece with students in particular? But Lorinda, do you just want to tell us what your kind of plans are currently around that asynchronous synchronous piece?
Just very briefly, we've been settling on a few tools that we want to use digitally. So we're using our learning management system. I'm going to be using Microsoft Teams for the video to record or to have it live with the kids. But we really want to have a good balance for the kids of being able to see their teacher and being able to touch base. Because I think that's one of the things that can be lost with online learning. We've got structures around what we want for the learning, but we really want to make sure that teachers are the face for their kids in the time that might be quite disruptive for them.
Great. So can we maybe just explore that a little bit more than Lorinda and those kind of things, because as Rich says, not everyone will have access to the internet. Not everyone will have a device at home, but even those kids who are in a fortunate position to have a device and have access to technology, this may be interesting and fun for a week, and then maybe 2 weeks in it becomes a little bit harder. And kind of what are our thoughts around the kind of things we can do to support kids over a longer arc of learning than just maybe a week off school and learning online?
I think some of the first steps are the simple fact that we have a slight advantage with still being with our students and being able to set up protocols and ways to connect before school closes. So we've been encouraging our teachers to trial things with their kids beforehand, just so it doesn't seem as different. So that the routines can continue that they start now over the next few days or weeks, can continue at home. But yeah, I think it'll be quite stressful for quite a few parents and students at home because there's so many variables. So we discussed as well with teachers that it's not going to be perfect, but to show up and be emotionally present for your kids is really important.
I would say on that point, I guess my challenge to teachers is not to slip into bad pedagogy. We know what we want and what we aim for when the kids are with us. I feel like there's this automatic default when we go online that it's about setting sort of worksheet related tasks or really set defined tasks, whereas the home environment can be a really rich, engaging environment still for learning, and particularly project-based learning. We're looking at how to run our inquiry projects still in that online space and using the home environment. And just because we're pushing content out digitally doesn't mean kids are always doing digital things. You know, if you're building a a veggie garden, what's the maths related to that, and taking photos and uploading that, all those sort of things that people are mentioning that they're doing. That example came to mind from the parent today due to the lack of fruit and veg in the supermarket. But how do we tap into those authentic moments in their life and build our learning around that, and not just resort to worksheets or online equivalents to worksheets? Adam might have some ideas around that, but that's sort of the challenge to the teachers, and that face-to-face piece too. We've got to be engaging. It's got to be engaging because we're competing with Disney Plus and Netflix.
That's right.
There's a lot of learning to be had on Disney Plus and Netflix. That's all I'm saying, right?
Rich, could I just say that I just made a note about this veggie garden, because my thinking is that, like Chris had mentioned, like, how do you keep interest? That veggie garden concept is so great because it literally is about waiting it out, right? What is this over time, right? And so we know that if this is going to be weeks from now, then there's progress to be made, and there is interest, right? I would imagine that there would be interest. That's great.
Yeah. And the concept that they don't have to be doing digital things all the time. It's, the digital platforms we're talking about, but the learning can be really authentic, project-based, hands-on, as well as digital.
That's right.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just to build on what Rich and Lorinda were saying. Rich, you're right. It's really important that we have a balance of things they can do offline, because the screen time has been unbelievable for teachers as well. So I really recommend taking regular breaks away from your devices, because at least maybe every half an hour go for a walk or something. But just building on what you were saying about keeping their interest over time. Like I said, I've been doing this for 7 weeks now, and I think you've got to make the most of that face-to-face time. They keep coming back for their teachers. I think if it's just for the work, they'll lose interest. So make the most of that time, and also make sure the work is relevant. We're actually continuing our units. We're not just giving busy work. We're not just keeping them, giving them things to do. These are the units that we would be teaching in school. So I think we've kind of kept that relevance and the importance there.
That's so good. Emily, sorry, Chris, I just want to give Emily a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, we're really focusing on that as well with the distance learning, and emphasizing that all the learning doesn't have to be online. So trying to find, as everyone else has said, really meaningful ways to engage outside of the online environment as well. And knowing that parents are going to probably be doing their own work from home. And so there may not be always multiple devices, or there'll be another sibling there to compete with and things like that. So just being mindful of the environment and what they actually have available to them at their home as well.
We offered a loan service for devices because some families were struggling. They had one device for the whole family. So we actually allowed them to loan devices from school, which helped a lot, I think.
So just building on that idea, I guess, I was chatting to someone today who works in one of our territories in Australia, and they were talking about Uber learning. So, kids won't all be able to have those devices. So can we send out their library reading books essentially in an Uber or several Ubers, deliver these books out, then collect them back in and actually keep doing things. And I think the creativity that we're going to see amongst educators is actually going to be incredible and exciting. And just that second point around the whole idea of those learning arcs over time. In my former life, I was the director of Emerging Sciences Victoria, which was an online science, a virtual science school. And our design challenge was, how do you take the best of the learning we do in class and move it on into a digital space? And I think thinking about how do you get the kids to get quick wins? How do you get the kids to feel good about themselves? How do you get the kids to engage in a longer term project, which they're investing their time in? And it sounds like you guys have got some wonderful ideas around that.
That's great. So, Chris, can I just jump in? Can I ask a quick question about thinking about all this? And I think somebody alluded to it a minute ago. Are you grading? Because I read today that there was a whole school that said, hey, we're not grading any of this. And I think, Adam, you brought it up that you're doing more formative assessment. But is there a grade to be earned during this time?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth pointing out that IT primary. So everything I'm saying could be very different in secondary. But grading is not a massive part of what I do anyway. So I think I would have to ask my secondary colleagues for that.
What about you guys here in Australia?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Lorinda.
Sorry, yeah, with early learning right through to year 12, the expectation is a lot heavier for our senior years teachers who are going to try and maintain their VCE and end of school results. But obviously, things may get in the way, but they're going to try their best to try and deliver things so that things can continue. So there still will be a lot of assessments, but there may be a lot of subjects that will suffer because there's certain pracs or certain things that if everyone's on quarantine and they can't display something from the lab, there's certain things that just can't go ahead. But in general, it's going to be a lot more relaxed than real school life.
Can I just, for my 2 cents worth, is I think that's a good thing. I think I genuinely think that sometimes we over-assess in Australia, and we love to measure stuff, and we really value what we measure, but we don't always measure what we value. And this is a great opportunity for us to do that, right? Just to how good is it to celebrate kids who are self-regulating, kids who are able to manage their own learning, kids who are able to ask really good questions, and maybe that's a design opportunity for us to look at celebrating that rather than more traditional ways of summative assessment. That was just my soapbox, and I'll get back down off it.
Yeah. That had to be said. That had to be said.
I was going to say that just giving really good feedback to the kids and focusing less on more test type things is going to be really important here, and giving them what are they doing well and areas that they can improve on as they go. I think that it will also depend on how long we are in this distance learning approach. If it's only a week or two, then it might be okay with where we're at. As we look on later in the year, if it's 6 months from now that we're still doing this, it's going to make a big difference in how we approach things. So I think that for us in Australia, as we're starting out, we've got a plan, but it's going to continue to evolve over time as the needs change.
I love the concept of feedback and making it the right kind of feedback. And imagine when everybody develops that soft skill, bringing that back into the classroom and what that might look like.
Sorry, Jim.
Yeah, go ahead. Adam.
Just to reinforce that, the feedback has been massive while we've been offline, being really important while we're distance learning, not just to help the learning, but also to show that we're present and we're online with them and we're encouraging them. I think it's really important.
For sure. Kimberly, do you mind sharing what's happening in the chat? I know that there's been a little bit of a discussion in there. It's when you catch Kimberly off guard. I think I can look in there. I just want to just share a couple of things that were said. I think Leslie was saying that some kids will be left to mind younger kids as well during this whole time, that the parents who are maybe working from home will actually be relying on each other, the siblings, to take care of each other, right? So added responsibility, right? What an interesting distraction. And we also had another comment that last week was our first week of full online learning. I think this is somebody from out in Taiwan, Thailand, maybe. Last week was our first week of full online learning, and the students were sent with survey. The biggest distraction they mentioned was having siblings in the same household in different ages, right? So it's so important to consider that. These are all things that I don't think I was really even thinking about at this time. And then Leslie Altman says that online learning is not about replicating what we're doing in class, but rather an opportunity to reimagine learning in new spaces. So true. So true. Oh, yes.
Hi, Jim. Can I jump in on a question?
Yeah, sure.
The parents at home, we're going to have to also help to educate them about what that needs to look like at home. How do they set up routines that are going to be help their child be successful? What does the physical space look like for them? And then how do they help to deliver the content? Because we know that our youngest learners aren't going to be able to independently do it. So there's a lot of learning for our parents that we sometimes are forgetting about, not just the students and the teachers in this journey.
Yeah, it's so great to hear. It would be even more interesting to go in and search around what people are doing around the world to engage parents and help them be part of it, because it really is that parents are going to have to step up and get in there and help facilitate that learning, right?
And one of the things we're really keen to do, Rich, is just to do more of these webinars and quite regularly. And that sounds like it's definitely some webinar that we could pull together for parents, in fact.
That would be great. That'd be great.
Sorry, Rich. Over to you, Matt.
No, you're right. I was just going to say, we're using Google Sites to have, I guess, a community space at each level. So Classroom is sort of pushing content out and having that teaching and learning space, but we want to try and replicate the classroom so it can display work and things like that that kids are doing at home, but also have resources there for parents. So we have a site that we call Upschool, which parents can log on to and see the strategies that we use, and we teach them how to do things like read a reader at home with the kids, or form letters in handwriting, or even PE lessons, throwing and catching techniques, all those sort of things. And then the teachers can actually host embed the relevant videos in the site when they're covering that content in class, so that parents are equipped with the strategies that we're trying to teach, as well as the tasks. So when you're working with maths or with reading or whatever it is, that it's mirroring as close as possible as what we're encouraging the kids to do at school.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So what we might do is just have a little break from this conversation. We're going to invite Swan and possibly Kimberly and Chris to jump in on this as well, just to talk a little bit about the stuff that Google is. There are lots of technology companies who are offering lots of great technology, and we can explore that. But what is Google doing right now to support educators?
Thanks, Chris. We just started working from home, all of Google Australia and New Zealand this week as well. So we are in a very similar boat where, a lot of parents, as to Emily's point, I think a lot of parents are now either voluntarily or forced to work from home, or highly recommended to work from home over the next couple of weeks. So I think it'd be interesting to see not just the students being at home, but the parents being on home as well at the same time, and sort of what that setup's going to look like. Do you have the right Wi-Fi setup, the right infrastructure to support all of that? Because we all know there are limitations to technology in many households as well. In terms of what what Google's doing, we obviously have made a whole slew of announcements, which you can find on our website, google.com/edu. Namely, obviously, G Suite for Education is free. So if schools need to access any of the collaborative suite of products like this one that we're using now, Hangouts Meet, which we've recently announced is now made free for all G Suite for Education and business customers. So an example of this Hangout, you can have up to 250 people in a call. You can record it like we're doing right now, and then send it out later. And then the ability to live stream, up to 100,000 people. So that should cover most schools in a single domain as well. So we're excited. I think just the basic infrastructure and tools that we use in an enterprise, we're hoping we'll make available, and hoping that schools can take up the advantage of using something like this. We have a whole slew of distance learning resources that are on our education website. Again, that's google.com/edu. And that covers everything from how do you set up, some of the tools, how do you use, Google Classroom, like Rich was referring to earlier, and so again, many of the other productivity and collaborative tools within the suite as well. You'll see more coming over the next couple of weeks. We've got a YouTube Learning Hub, sort of in partnership with some of our education-focused content creators on YouTube, as well as a program called Teach from Home, which is sort of an initiative to create a hub of information and simple bits and bytes that we're going to send out to teachers in these areas as well. So stay tuned. There'll be more to come from our team, and and I'm excited just to have this conversation and figuring out and learning from our users. What features are needed and can be implemented to support distance learning. Chris or Kimberly, anything to add there?
I would add that if you go to the Google YouTube channel and look in the playlists section, there's actually a whole bunch of new playlists there now that are a whole slew of different lessons and tutorials and stuff that are made in multiple languages. So there's Chinese, Korean, I forget the other languages, but we've done them in a whole bunch of languages for the APAC region.
That's great to hear, because to go back to what Adam was saying, that it's great for teachers to watch these and then just repurpose them, right? Just record them in your own voice, with your own context and perspective. So what a great resource it is to get onto YouTube and find those playlists. Thanks for sharing that, Chris.
Final thing I'll just add is that Google is very much, as most people would be aware, a company that very much values input from others. And so if there is any specific product-related feedback, if you want to use our tools in a specific way as we shift the way that we're learning with kids in schools or outside of schools, then please do feed that feedback through, all our contact details. You can find Swan, Chris, and myself online really easily. We are collating all of that, and we are the teams are listening. The product teams are working really, really hard to try and respond to what we know needs to happen now, in order to actually make this as usable as possible. And just finally, if I can add as well, one of the things that I talk to teachers a lot about is that Google doesn't try to be everything to everyone. So we don't try to produce every single possible tool that you're ever going to need during this time. But one of the things that we do really well, I think, is that we play really nicely with others. So, there's lots of great integrations with other tools, that Adam in particular called out a few tools that just work so seamlessly with Classroom and some of our other tools. And so, please do check that out. If you haven't checked out the Chromebook App Hub that we produced, it's a really fabulous resource to kickstart, like, what tool could I use with this grade to do this particular type of activity. And I'll stop talking because I've had Sandra join. Hi, Sandra.
Thanks, Kimberly.
I apologize.
Well, welcome, Sandra. Thanks for making it in. Do you want to just do a quick introduction to yourself and tell us where you're at with this our topic tonight, the online learning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, apologies for being late. There's been, we just have a lot of meetings going on as we move into our 7th week of learning here. I'm in Beijing, China at Keystone Academy, and I'm the Director of Innovative Learning. And 7th week of online learning. And as we're moving into this new phase, so I guess very similar to Adam, who's on the line as well in Hong Kong, there's just been a lot of new learning and rethinking as we realize that our days have moved into weeks and weeks have moved into months, and we are not exactly sure when this will end, especially as other countries and schools are now jumping on board our bandwagon. We realize that we have to take, rather than a temporary approach, to approach and how we can make sure that the learning is strong and quality for our students. And so here we are. We've definitely, as a leadership team, learned a lot through this process. But as we move into this, we're calling it our new phase of online learning. We realize that there are some things that we need to rethink in terms of our communication, our structure, bringing things a little bit more tight together, strengthening our synchronous as well as our asynchronous learning strategies, and really being selective about the tools that we have, but at the same time trying to be more creative while moving forward. And then another area that we're also looking at in this new phase is, what does assessment look like? How do we do our Q3 report cards, or do we do Q3 report cards? And if so, what aspects are we going to evaluate on our students? One thing that has become clear as we look into that assessment piece is the learning skills as well, or if you're an IB school like we are, the ATL skills are something that we really do value a little bit more in this phase of learning, because as we're on online learning, those self-management skills, organizational skills, collaboration just really become very pronounced in an online setting. And we're using this opportunity to give feedback to our students and help them to learn as well. We think that this, although has been very challenging and difficult, it's been such a great opportunity, as well as not only are our teachers upskilling and learning many new tools as well as skill sets that they can move forward into face-to-face learning in the future. But our students also are learning valuable skills of how to be of self-efficacy and self-empowerment. How do they learn on their own in some cases sometimes, and not rely on always asking a teacher how to do something. They're learning to research and explore and be creative with tools in order to share and communicate their learning. So yeah, it's been challenging, but we've been learning a lot, and we welcome just the opportunity to share with other teachers and schools who are going to be joining in on the fray. It's not always fun to be a pioneer, and in this case, we're all venturing into the wild, wild west. And I think if we have good attitudes about it, if we proceed with caution, but also would not be afraid of failing, but also learn to collaborate and share with each other, as many of the schools across the region have been doing. It's also a very wonderful and beautiful thing. I think just seeing how not only in the healthcare system, how people are banding together and really connecting. I think the fact that educators around the world are just communicating and sharing. I mean, the number of resources that are out there on Twitter, and the number of organizations like Google who have been offering some of their advanced features for free is amazing.
Yeah. I feel like, and we're out. That was great. That was Sandra. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's so inspiring, right? I really felt moved by it, because it was like, because I feel like that's this whole time when you're going, oh gosh, what's gonna happen? This is so stressful, and you're over there like, look at that, you got this beautiful light behind you, and it's just like, oh, let me tell you how glorious this is. It really does. It just really does offer a lot of hope, right? It offers a lot of hope, and I can imagine there's been a lot of struggle too. And we're coming closer to the end of this program, so can I ask, maybe if we could just go down, what is your number one thing resource that helped you the most? Like, what is I'm talking specific, because there's so many resources being shared, which as you mentioned, Sandra, is so glorious, right? But like, what is pick one, pick your top one. What's that one? And can we just go down the list? Like, what's your number one favorite resource that you found or use? Starting with you, Sandra. Sorry, Adam.
Sorry.
Now, so we'll go to Sandra, and then Adam, you can go after her.
As much as I would love to use Google, it's not available in China. So I have to say it's been Microsoft Teams, because it's really helped to not only bring together our staff and for us to share asynchronously through a similar platform like Google Hangout, but it's also allowed us to be able to do training online with all of our staff who really need the training.
Good. Adam?
Yeah, I think Google Classroom is an obvious one. But apart from that, I think I would say my number one tool right now is Screencastify.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And for people who don't know what that is, it's a very, very easy Chrome extension. You just Google it and find it, install it, and it'll help you to create screencasts super quickly.
Also offering a free upgrade as well.
Yeah, and they're sharing so much, right? Sorry, Chris. They're sharing so much right now that if you go on there and look at their stuff on Twitter. Chris, what were you saying?
Saying I learned that it was being offered for free from Screencastify just from reading Adam's blog, which is a great resource. I just looked for it.
There you go. Good. Rich, what's your number one? It doesn't have to be a tool, but like, what's the number one resource that you have moving forward?
Well, I don't know about a number. We got a blend, and we sort of, I think, Classroom is a big one. Also Google Sites, and this one, Google Meet, for keeping the staff together, and hopefully doing some virtual stuff with the kids as well.
Yeah, thanks. Lorinda?
Yeah, I ran a whole staff session this afternoon in our largest theatre on our campus, because people wanted to have enough spacing between them, just in case. And I think the thing that went over the best is not only did I highlight our top tool at our school, which is our learning management system, which isn't a Google or a Microsoft product, it's a separate bespoke one, but the teachers really needed to hear that they are valued and they are on the front line and they are the ones who are putting in the extra effort, the time, and the things needed to ensure that learning continues to happen. And I don't think they hear that enough here in Australia. So if you're in front of your staff at any stage, or if we go offline, is just to keep appreciating them and think of ways to appreciate them when you go remote.
Yeah, words, the love language, right? How about you, Emily? We lose Emily.
As we're kind of starting to wrap up, are there any last questions that anyone has for any of our panelists, or indeed anyone in the hangout with us, in the meet with us?
Don't be afraid to pipe in. Just unmute yourself, though. You have to unmute yourself to ask.
Well, I know we do have some silent lurkers in here as well, which is all good. That's fine.
They're the best kind of lurkers, Chris.
They are the best. You don't want noisy lurkers, right?
So
I have to say, I like as troublesome as this whole situation is, I actually am quite excited about it because I think it represents this pivotal moment where I know in this whole ed tech community, we've been talking about a whole lot of change stuff for many years, and we've been trying to encourage teachers to sort of bite the bullet and do some of this stuff. And I know it's an ugly way to have your hand forced to do this, but I'm actually really excited about what it's going to look like on the other side, because I think people will actually realize that there's a whole bunch of cool stuff that they maybe haven't been embracing. And when they're forced to, they will kind of come away from it going, this is actually pretty exciting stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm semi-excited by that. You know?
Yeah, it's typically my way. I also worry a little bit about some of the kids that are going to get left out of this, right? I worry, and I wonder, like maybe Chris, that's maybe something we look at addressing as well. Like how do we bring, how do we help the people that potentially have or will be left out?
I did ponder the thought today that for so many years we've been telling people they should embrace technology, but I kept hearing people say, but what if the internet goes down? And it's like, maybe the question should have been, what if we don't embrace technology and we have a viral pandemic that across the world, you know?
Yeah.
But if I can speak in and from the future, I have to say that it's exactly what you said, Chris. In the beginning of the year, I was not the most popular person on campus as we were trying to roll out. We took out our ICT teacher and we had a full-on tech integration kind of model, bringing in a coach, and everyone kept saying, we can't get you enough. How are we going to get you? And now our team has become the most popular team and the most beloved team, and everybody has been just so thankful and appreciative. And it's exactly right. Where before we were kind of just tiptoeing into the pool and having people just try and taste. Now they're full on into the pool and they can swim and they're thankful for it. And we knew they would be. They just needed to do it. So it is exciting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with Chris and Sandra. The technology integration has been amazing, and this is going to continue long after we go back to school, and that's a massive silver lining. I totally agree with Chris. I'm excited about that. People are, discovering new tools that are doing amazing things, and they just weren't willing to embrace that before.
And there's certainly a thing around permission, right? And suddenly, where in the past we've sought permission to do these kind of things, now that permission is imposed on us. So we don't really have a lot of choice. Jim, we're rolling up to 9 p.m. It has been an absolutely. I think Sandra Chow is now my new favorite person. It used to be Jim Sill, but now it's Sandra. Thanks, Sandra.
That's right. I love how we kicked it off with Adam from the future, and then we finished it with Sandra from the future, and we just wrapped like, oh, what are we doing in between? It's so great, but it's so great that you guys were able to come in and share and be vulnerable in that, like what you're planning. and in front of everybody. And we're so grateful, Sandra, that you were at least able to join us for these last few minutes. Chris, you want to talk a little bit about where we're going with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So just this has come from just discussions that we've had, and we want to build on this, and we want to build particularly in Australia and support our Australian educators and let them access amazing people like Adam and Sandra, etc. What we're aiming to do is to get a Google Classroom up tomorrow, where we can look at actually having that discussion and sharing that. We'll be tweeting that out, and we will be using the hashtag #OnlineTogetherAU, and also building some more webinars based on the kind of things that people want and the kind of things that people ask for. So we've already looked at parents in this discussion tonight, like what can we do for parents? What can we do for learners to help them be most self-regulating, best home learners we can find? And also maybe some tools and hints and tips as well. So we're really keen to keep this discussion going. We've got a really small, eclectic number of people, but there's already, I keep checking on Twitter, but there's already some Twitter kind of chat around this. We would love your help in amplifying it and connecting with as many Australian and international educators as we possibly can. And I guess it just really, there are two things I want to say to finish off. The first is that I got a message from one of the silent lurkers saying the reason that she's silently lurking is she's eating meatballs with a martini. So I thought that was important to share, that you can learn at home with meatballs and a martini. So that's good to know.
Somebody's living their best life right now.
Living your best life. I can't tell you what she just messaged me now. It's not appropriate. And the second thing is just a massive thank you. Like it's 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. in Australia. I'm not sure what time it is in Shanghai and in Hong Kong. I think it's a bit earlier, right?
Beijing. I think Sandra's in Beijing.
In Beijing, sorry.
I made that mistake at the beginning too, Sandra, so I just want to correct it.
And just giving up your time to connect with each other. So just a massive thank you certainly from me.
And for me too. And thanks, Chris. I think this really came from a conversation where we were just all together looking at what was coming, and we just said we should do something. And because there's just so much happening that we really wanted to be able to support the folks that we're supporting here and they're supporting us. So we just wanted to be able to give back to that. We're so grateful for our visitors that came in, lurking from the side, from international, from outside of Australia and New Zealand, but also you guys here in Melbourne and Sydney. We're so grateful for you guys to make the time and share. We'll continue to share. Just be looking out for online and retweeting, and hopefully we'll get that hashtag going with where we are next. Thanks very much, you guys. I appreciate the time. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll share this out with everybody tomorrow. This is where I try to look for that button really quickly. There we go.
Seamless, Jim. Seamless. Thanks, guys.